Good morning, top of the morning to you, and happy St. Paddy's Day, good sir. How are you doing today?
Is today St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
That's right. It's the 17th. Oh my gosh.
Welcome to the world, good sir.
Yeah. It's like, what?
What?
Thank you. Well, I was just so excited to see you because I haven't seen you in such a while.
I know, it feels like forever.
But I have a St. Patrick's Day memory. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm going to tell it.
Go for it.
Good to see you, Ben, Constitution Vet. We got people jumping into the chat here. Good morning, Carrie, and good morning, Hammer Time. Good morning. Good morning. So here's my St. Patrick's Day memory. It was St. Patrick's Day of 2020.
Oh, the best St. Patrick's Day. Oh, yeah.
So I have a very good friend in town who is the owner of an Irish pub.
Oh, nice.
An Irish pub. It's the only bar in town that, well, actually there's another bar in town that is worth going to, but this is the hip pub. It doesn't have any TV screens. You know, there's no, you go to that pub, you're not there to watch sports. You're there to have conversations.
Okay. So it's a pub that's an actual like pub.
It's an Irish pub. It's a pub. You sit at the bar or you sit at the table, and the menu is all like shepherd's pie and
Scotch eggs.
Yeah, it's just the guy.
Meat, potatoes.
Yes.
Thick. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's a good Catholic brother.
You have an Irish pub without a Catholic running it.
Right? He has 11 children.
He's a perfect Catholic man.
4 of them work for him in the pub.
It's hilarious.
And he's an actor. Like you would probably recognize him. Like he's had bit parts and he's had a pretty good career as an actor. And his second career is being the owner of an Irish pub.
Yeah.
And so it was St. Patrick's Day of 2020. And if you know anything about Irish pubs, that's their day of the year, right?
Yeah.
That's their day. If you're a football fan, it's the Super Bowl. If you're, some people Christmas or Easter, right? You have your biggest day of the year, your birthday. Maybe you have one day of the year is your favorite day of the year. For an Irish pub, it's March 17th, right? Every year. And so they prep. That's where they make a bunch of their money that day. And on this particular day, I believe air travel had been shut down. Right.
Everything
I think international travel had stopped for the first time in history.
Yeah.
Right. In March of 2020. And so he's all geared up for his big day, and the police are shutting him down. And I happen to be, it wasn't even on my radar necessarily that it was St. Patrick's Day, but in my daily exercise, I take a walk or a run. And a particular day it brought me around to my friend's pub, and he is already drunk and the police are there. And I'm just standing off about 20, about 5 or 10 yards away, just observing, and his son's there kind of corralling him. He doesn't actually get drunk at work all the time, but on this particular day, he knew this was coming, and the police are shutting him down, and he's now a pariah in the community because I live in California, and you got your woke snowflakes that think, yes, this pandemic, you're killing people by letting them sit at your bar and drink.
Yeah.
Right. You're killing people by letting them come in and drink at your bar.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, it was early in the thing, and I was like, are we about to face martial law? Are we really gonna go out? I'm like, what's going on? I have a friend that was like, yeah, martial law is gonna come. They're gonna start shutting down streets, and people aren't gonna be able. Like, it didn't quite get that bad. I mean, it got bad enough, but it didn't quite get that bad.
Yeah.
So that's my Irish. That guy had to shut down his pub, and like by law, the community was shutting him down, and he opened up quickly as soon as he pushed against the goad. So he's still in business. I was worried he was going to go out of business.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
He stuck with it, but There's my St. Pat. That was 3 years ago already.
Yeah. Well, like, every year I enjoy St. Patty's Day, but like this year I got my authentic Aaron sweater made in Ireland. I got my Irish breakfast I'm drinking. My ancestors are all from Scotland, so I'm not of Irish descent at all. I'm all of Scottish descent, but close enough. We both have it. We both have an equal hatred for the royals. So.
Good to see you, Constitution Vic. Good to see
Good
you,
to
Ben.
see you too.
Right.
It's been forever. But to be honest with you, I think this topic is perfect because the topic is to celebrate during these really challenging times with the recent news of major banks failing. A lot of people can use this moment to just give in to this defeatist narrative, giving into that I quit mentality. I'm done. Embracing the black pill, if you will. And I understand. Like, I get it. I understand the desire to just go into this anxious way of living your life, constantly worrying, constantly stressing. And like before spring break, I saw a lot of my coworkers feeling the same way. And again, I get it. I understand it. But let me tell you, if you want something to remind you just how small and insignificant you are, but just how much peace is overwhelming you, go to somewhere like the Grand Canyon. That's where I was. That's where I've been. And let me tell you, that topic is a great way to segue into today's topic because here's the deal. Everything that's collapsing, everything, those things are collapsing at some point gave in to the evil leftist Marxist dogma.
Silicon Valley Bank.
Exactly.
Signature Bank.
Just start looking at those companies. Look at their timelines. Look at when they started to focus more on diversity, equity, inclusion. When they started to embrace Marxist ideologies, guess what? They collapsed. We're seeing it happen in real time. Not just banks. These woke school boards, these Marxist school boards are being collapsed by the parents. Every single day I see a new committee on Forbes News alerts and C-SPAN, committee after committee after committee, holding these Marxist tyrants accountable.
And those don't make headlines, right? They don't make the headlines at that stage.
No, of course not.
Yeah,
because they don't feel the narrative. When you see modern day academia failing, and yet you see private actual Christian universities flourishing, when you see abortion given back to the people to manage, not the federal government, these little things, some people may view them as a horrible, bad thing. Oh, our society's collapsing. Yeah, it is collapsing. Because it is God's divine plan. And if you need to escape all that collapse, if you need to just get away from it all and escape it and get a good reality check on how God actually is in charge, go to the Grand Canyon. You don't realize how majestic it truly is until you're there. And you're like, holy crap, I am nothing. I am just a speck.
Holy.
Yeah. And yet he still loves me. And so before I give it back to you, there's one verse that really just solidifies all this for me. It's let's see here. John 16:33. I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you will, not maybe, you will have tribulation. But take heart. I have overcome the world. And that, of course, is our King Christ talking. So, yeah, there you go.
Well, I thank God early in my Christianity, I started reading the Bible and started coming across those things, kind of the shocking things like, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, right? You're going to get persecuted. And Jesus saying that verse you just quoted is like, you will suffer. And more as I dive into that theology, it's like, actually, that's the guarantee, right? That's the evidence. And that's the proof that God is with you. And so rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. It's like, oh, when you experience persecution and suffering, or when you see it happening, to good people being sued and taken to court, etc., it's like, oh, that's God at work, right? That's God exposing the nonsense. It's these blind leading the blind, thinking, you can't escape the religious instincts, and wokeness is a religion. It's absolutely a religion. It's a godless religion, but it's absolutely a religion.
Sure.
And you violate their orthodoxy, right? You become apostate, right? You are, that's a tangent. I'm not going to go on, but that verse, that's why we need to spend time in the Word. And here's a little plug. I think most people in here are aware I do the Bible every morning. It's like, you got to have a foundation. You got to make sure you're tuned into what's really going on. And the only way to really know what's going on is to be well versed in Scripture. And so thank you for that. And then the Grand Canyon. So that's my home state, Arizona.
Right.
I've been to the Grand Canyon twice. I was there when I was 8 or 9. Maybe younger. And then I went again about a year and a half ago. I went to visit my dad because my dad lives about an hour and a half from the Grand Canyon. And so it's like, I have a video of it. I recorded it walking up to it to see it for the first time in X number of years since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And there's just no words for it. There's no words for it. Even if you watch the video, you go and watch videos right now. It's like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. There's no words.
It doesn't do it justice.
And it's experiential. You have to be there. And that's how God also has designed this, right?
Yeah.
When, and you can come to know Jesus through knowledge and everything, but having a personal relationship, not everybody's had that, amazing overnight conversion, which I did, but it's the experiential. And here's one of the sensations that I had as I was sitting on the edge of this gaping hole in the ground. I'm like, God has blessed us with the mountaintop experience without having to climb the mountain.
That's a good point.
When you're at the edge of the Grand Canyon, you are you are literally standing at the top of a mountain because it's straight down everywhere. And you can look, and it's miles. It's like you can look and see through these cracks. Oh, there's water running down there. And it's like looking down, and then you lift your gaze and you're like, oh, there's the horizon way over there. But you're on top of a mountain. And so you get that experience. You're without all the arduous suffering and strain of having to climb that mountain.
Now, if you want to endure the strain, you can hike down to the very bottom, hike back up. That's what I did. And
but the Grand Canyon, it's a gift from God. You get to have the mountaintop experience without the climb.
Right. That's a great point.
Even though life is that climb, right? It's a metaphor. But we also are on the mountaintop. We're already seated with Jesus in heavenly places, right? We are with him, right? So there's the metaphor. Now, the other thing, so I want to go in this other direction.
Yeah.
If I can remember what I was going to say. Oh, so the collapse of banks, like 2 of the top, or 3 of the largest bank fails in history happened last week, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So the 2 out of the 3 biggest bank failures, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, were number 2 and number 3. I don't remember what number 1 was. I guess it was in 2008, whatever bank that was. I don't know. But so it's this upheaval in the markets and the results of some very, very bad fiscal policy, in our administration, or in our apparatus, in our deep state apparatus, or the ossified bureaucracy. Just, I don't know finances, but I've listened to enough to understand, this is the result. This is an inevitable result of some decisions that were made that were the wrong decisions at different times.
Right.
And that seems to be, par for the course. Let's bail this out and it'll give confidence. It's not all right. So I don't want to dwell on that too much longer, but is this the beginning of another great crash, a dramatic crash, or are there other features that have come into play in the past couple decades that will offset that. And what I mean is, money has value based on it's the government that prints it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
The trust in that system. And, a piece of paper is not worth $1. A penny is not worth a penny, right? It's like, it's just the trust that these physical objects represent some value in our system.
Mm.
But the fact of the matter is, there are so many things that have value. And so which things that have value are affected by banks collapsing, and which things that have value are not affected by banks collapsing. For example, I used to own a house. I used to own a house, and it had value. It had real value, and I had almost paid the whole mortgage off, and then I had to sell it, and I refinanced, and then I had to sell it. And so I no longer own that house, and I don't have any of that value anymore. Right. But I used all the value of that house to make sure that I owned something else of value. I owned something, it's called an IP, an intellectual property, right? I owned something, and I spent the time where I was confessing there. I spent the time where I was, living off of the refinance of that house. And then ultimately, because of the pandemic, had to sell it, et cetera, and things got worse. But all of the value of that, I channeled into something else that I believe has incredible value, except that value is not yet realized, right? An intellectual property, a life story. I own a life story of an incredible character, a historical character that I believe should be a household name. And so I own this other thing of value. I don't earn any residuals off it. I can't take it to the bank and deposit it. I can't buy a meal with this other thing, but it will never lose its value as long as I continue to pursue it and I convince other people of its value and they invest in it, and it continues to develop and grow, right? So then, you have other things of value. A piece of property, it has a value, right? And so there's so many things with value. So when a bank collapses, there's something of value that's disappearing, like vanishing into thin air, right? Something that was propped up that they thought had value and now it doesn't have value. All that money that was in those banks that's not secured or backed up by the feds or whatever simply evaporates and ceases to exist. But
Right.
in the same way, other things of value come into existence out of nothing. And this is not a commercial for crypto, but I was thinking about crypto the other day. So in along the lines of heaven and earth, or substance dualism, right? As Christians, we are dualistic. We have a physical body and a non-physical body, right? We have a physical body and a spirit body, right? And that's the best way to think about it. It's because substance dualism refers to the soul as a non-physical substance, right? The word
Right.
substance,
Right.
we tend to think of this as material, as scientifically touchable, whatever. No, a substance is not essentially physical. So Bitcoin, heaven and earth, earth is the actual coin, and heaven is the virtual or the crypto coin, because it's something that value that doesn't exist in the material, right? It doesn't exist
Okay.
in the physical realm. And where your treasure is, there your heart will also be, right? Store up your
Right.
treasures in heaven. Heaven's not this place way off that we're going to get to sometime. Heaven is something that exists here and now, that you and I are citizens of. We inhabit heaven right now. Right. And we will inhabit heaven forever, and we will see Jesus face to face and all those things. I'm not saying there is no heaven in the future. I'm
Yeah.
saying we tend to think of heaven as a place I'm going to, rather than
Right.
the place that I am right now, seated with Jesus in heavenly realms.
So
We are
like
in heaven. So
the false teachers would be like the crypto scammers, like Crypto Zoo with
right,
Paul. Yeah. Okay.
right, creating something out of nothing, some valuable thing that's not really valuable, but there
Right.
is a true. So, for example, the plan that I have, I'm just disclosing, like, the plan that I have is the thing that I do own that is of value. Once I get it to a certain point, I want to convert it into, or not convert it, but to, get the lawyers together and write the algorithm, right? Legal terminology that create what is a crypto coin. It's an algorithm that a lawyer sat down and drafted, and they contracted, and now this thing exists because of a bunch of lawyers and algorithms, right? It's programming that creates this virtual thing. And if a person
Right.
understands, you don't even have to understand all the legality behind it to buy it. It exists. It actually exists. It's a non-physical entity that exists. And this is an argument you can use against atheism, right? It's like, you don't believe in non-physical entities? Yes, you do, if you own crypto.
Yeah, you clearly do.
Right? Right? That's a
Well, you do
non-physical.
if you use even a debit card or a credit card. There's
Yeah.
no physical things. It's just numbers. That's all it is.
Yep.
And
It's
yet
some
you base your entire life off
your
of it.
your whole life is built upon something non-physical
Right.
that exists in the heavenlies. And so be encouraged. Here's the last point, and I'll turn it over to you. The land of Goshen is a good metaphor, right? Egypt was destroyed by those plagues, yet the Israelites lived in Egypt and they thrived, right? The Israelites, God's people, lived in Egypt, and they weren't. They were certainly affected because they were within the Egyptian economy, but they weren't devastated and destroyed. Rather, all of the wealth of the Egyptians landed in the Israelites' pockets,
Mm.
right? And so God preserves his people. And yes, your bank account may be going down, and the cost to buy dinner or gas is going up, or to buy eggs or whatever is going up. And so, but God has a plan, and he's going to protect you through this. Even if you lose your house, like I did, right? Even if you lose things that you put your hope in or that you've been building up toward, there's a bigger plan at work. You will suffer. We've already gone over that. You're going to suffer, but God is going to reward you for enduring through the suffering.
The ongoing challenge for all Christians is being able to learn how to endure, how to suffer through these tribulations while also glorifying God. It doesn't make any logical sense. Why would you enjoy something that is causing you immense tribulation? Right? It makes no logical sense. But when you move past that and realize, hey, there is a grand creator, my God, whose son died for my sins, who will guarantee me salvation for believing in him, right? All that being said, when you stop and look for a second, are things hurting? Yes. Are there trials and tribulations? Yes. We've talked about this 1,000 times. But when you stop for a moment and look at exactly what is collapsing, it's basically microcosms of Sodom and Gomorrah. All these little moments, these examples, are things that God absolutely detests. And they're crumbling. And so even though you, a small little person, is suffering, understand that guess what? You are still here. You are still alive. You are still breathing, which means you still have a voice. You still have a chance to keep fighting. And here's another thing, too. What has given you that strength to keep going is God. It is his love for you. And so, I don't know. It's one thing to say this with a fancy bank account. It's another thing to say it when you've actually been in situations where you've had nothing. And let me tell you, from my experience, when you've been in situations where you've come close to death, where you've had nothing, when living in a tent, using the bathroom in a box in the middle of the desert, getting shot at, that really humbles you. And in the Grand Canyon, when I went down there, it was the right type of escape because it reminds you, even here, when you have nothing, you still have God watching over you. And so I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to act like I have all the answers. And obviously, you can't be a Christian and just say, "Oh, well, I'll just sit here and let God take care of me." No, you still need to do things. You still need to get a job. You still need to take care of your family. You still need to do certain things, right? But do things in order to glorify God, not yourself. And I guess that's the great way to end this. Do things to glorify God, not yourself. And as you do that, as you strive to do that, you will see all the things that go against God collapse as we're seeing right now. And that's why we need to celebrate.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, honestly, the feeling you get when you hear SVB collapses. So the first thing is you don't know anything about it. I never even heard of SVB, right? Like,
Right,
what?
right,
What's SVB?
right.
And then we get more information like, oh, they gave millions and millions of dollars to BLM. Oh, okay. And then their entire board, I don't know if this is Signature or BLM, but their entire board was a bunch of mega donors to Democrats. I'm like, oh. I was like,
Oh.
oh, okay.
And it was the CEO chose to focus more on diversity, equity, inclusion instead of actually running the company.
Yeah.
And it fails.
They had one board member that had any banking experience or something like of their
Mm.
entire board, right? It's like, oh, okay, so this is a good thing. I mean, yeah, it's bad, some people say, oh, this is an earthquake of, economic earthquake, and this is the beginning, and maybe it is.
Good.
But yeah,
That's
exactly.
the
It's like
point. Good.
some men trust in horses, some men trust in chariots, but we will trust in the name of the Lord our God, right? It's in horses and chariots. That's SVB bank. Some men trust in their accounts. Some men trust in the things that they're investing in. Some men trust in the zeitgeist of the era, the
To me, this is
BLM
God
wokeism.
saying, I'm in charge, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
And my plan will happen whether you like it or not.
I do want to make a comment about one thing you've mentioned twice, and so as individuals, we can tend to see ourselves as it's just me. I'm this little insignificant nobody. What effect, or who cares? And I have my job and my family in my little corner of the universe, and keep in mind, Jesus died for you.
Right.
Right. You are
Right.
not insignificant. You may feel that. And like, well, if there's,
Right.
Billions of people on the planet and, so many Christians and, how much time does God have for me? You have the undivided attention of the only audience that matters, right? You have the undivided attention. That's God is so different than us. And, we can't conceive of how
Right.
God could commit his undivided attention to so many people. It seems counterintuitive. It's like an oxymoron. How can a billion people have the undivided attention of God? He's God, and he's there. He's with you. He hears you. He understands you. And the little things you do, like having a job, going to your job, or raising your kids, or, checking their homework or whatever, that is worship. You are worshiping God by doing that, and by doing it well. You're not worshiping God by just showing up and you're worshiping God by committing to what God has put before you. Remember, you're immortal, right? This is just a phase. This is a period of time. This is the cocoon. You're the caterpillar in the cocoon, and the butterfly stage is ahead. And this is something, I use this phrase, a more recent epiphany. As a Christian, as I spend time, meditating on the word, spending time in the word, and contemplating and listening to good teaching. One of the things that has occurred to me, and maybe this is creative speculation, but I believe it. Every one of us, every believer in eternity, because we have eternity, every one of us is going to be the center of attention at some point, right? Like you and I, you are going to stand right in front of Jesus, and Jesus is going to be talking to you, and you're going to have a conversation, and everybody that exists is going to be paying attention to your conversation, your intimate conversation with Jesus, and telling your life story and telling what you care about, and you will be honored and lifted up. Every one of us will be famous, and every one of us will know every one of the rest of us by name. We will have every other believer's name memorized. We will know each other's life stories at some point in this eternity. So it's not that nobody cares and nobody's ever going to know about you. Everybody is going to know everything about you, and it's going to be glorious and good, right? It's going to happen, right? And so if God cares about you, he's going to lift you up and honor you. So it's not a waste of time. Anything you do, everybody's going to have their moment. And it's one of those capacities. I'm going to use the rest of this time. It's one of the capacities we don't have right now, but we have all this brain matter that we haven't used fully. We're going to have everybody's name memorized and facial recognition. We're going to know each other, and we're going to love each other. We're going to know everything about each other. And we're going to know all the Old Testament people. We're going to be able to interview each one of them. We're going to know, wait, what happened really here? What other things happened? Because we just got snippets of history. We're going to get to dive into all these incredible stories in detail. That's what heaven is. That's what the future holds for us. Loving one another forever and ever and ever. There.
God
That's
knows
what
the
it is.
names of all the stars, and He knows you intimately.
Amen. Love you, Ben. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, boss. Take care.